Welcome to the Week 14 Fantasy Forge recap. My name is Steve, and today we will just be doing a quick really 0 to 3 quick items on each team in regards to fantasy going forward. Performances, whatever I can extract from it in a quick manner. Other than that, just a quick promo. If this is the first time that you've come across any of my videos, I do a waiver wire video. And then on Wednesday, I have a video come out for each position. So that's the running back, tight end, wide receiver, and quarterback. Don't bother my time with the kickers and the DSTs. And then I have a Saturday special show where I kind of do a recap of any of the storylines going on, injury updates, as well as my start, sit, / boulder takes that I have for the week. So let's just start right off here with Buffalo going up against the New York Jets. It was a tough matchup, but the better team ended up winning here 22-12. And as far as Buffalo goes, the emergence of James Cook has been put on hold. He wasn't really too utilized in this game, so going to be hard to trust him for now going forward. But that running back situation in Buffalo can always be up and down and can change in any given week. Then for the New York Jets, Mike White is one tough dude. He has already been named the starter for next week because of that. And Zonovan Knight received the Breece Hall treatment this week, as in Michael Carter was not really utilized too much. Usually, the New York Jets have utilized a multi-backfield approach, but when they have someone they can rely upon and feel that they can rely upon, then that person gets a normal majority's workload, and that was what Zonovan Knight got this week. So that's a really good sign for Zonovan Knight owners going forward. And then Corey Davis got a concussion, I believe, in the game. I know he got kneed really hard in the head, and then he was out, so I can only assume it was a concussion. Then Cincinnati beat Cleveland 23-10, had control of it the entire game, and as far as Cincinnati goes, there's not really too much to pull away from it, but the injuries are going to be important going forward. Tyler Boyd had a finger injury, so hopefully that won't keep him out for more than this week's game. Hopefully he'll be back for next week's game. And T. Higgins had a hamstring pop up apparently like pre-warm-up, so maybe when he showed up in the morning it was feeling off. I'm going to take a moment here to just plug also, this is a reason to come and hang out with me ahead of time before the games. This unfortunately did not get reported upon at all pre-game, but the Saquon Barkley thing did, as far as him getting limited usage. It was like 5 minutes before kickoff or something that report came out. And a lot of weeks there are some last-second reports coming out that do change what we should expect that week from certain players. So that is something that if you come hang out with me 1 hour prior to kickoff, that I keep my eyes on, because I'm not inundated with any, too many start-sit questions. That is something I'm able to focus on, and keeping up to date on any of the news that comes out, and so you can just hang out and I'll let you know about that. As far as Cleveland goes in this game, Cooper Kupp was on a rep count, or a rep watch, I think is how it was explained pre-game. He ended up catching 2 of 7 targets for 42 yards. That is the reason for that, so we'll just keep an eye on his health going into next week, and hopefully he'll be fully healthy, so don't hold this against him too much this week. Then David Njoku also had 9 targets this week, and that's a really good sign, because we did not know for sure if Deshaun Watson would utilize David Njoku too much or enough, and 9 targets is definitely enough, so that's a great sign for him. And I also do believe that Deshaun Watson showed enough this week that we can trust him in fantasy football going forward, in my opinion. Now on to Dallas versus Houston, and Dallas beat Houston 27-23, pulled it out in the end, really. Houston had the lead for most of the game, or a lot of it, and it's a pretty crazy game. As far as Dallas goes, I wouldn't look into the poor performances from this game too much. The running backs did what we would have hoped and expected from them, so that was good. And as far as Houston goes, not too much. There's really no fantasy players except for Dameon Pierce on this team, and he got injured late in the game. It was an ankle injury, so really we don't know how serious it is or is not at this point. I at least didn't see any updates as to it being super serious or being not a concern at all. So we'll have to find out about that. I wouldn't want a different running back from there going forward. Then Detroit pretty much slaughtered Minnesota 34-23, and they really had a commanding lead for a lot of the game. I would say that this score doesn't do it justice to how much they beat them, how handedly they beat him in this game. But Detroit went into this game with a game plan of attacking through the air, much more than their normal game plan, which tends to be pretty run heavy. So that left the running backs as duds in fantasy, unfortunately, this week. And Yeah, I don't know, DeAndre, if they're gonna trust their passing attack, because I don't know if there's any specific reason necessarily to attack Minnesota through the air. They do have a lot of weapons now through the air now that they're getting healthier. Jameson Williams coming back, and so that might just be something they're going to do. They may open up this offense unless the weather were to dictate otherwise. So pay attention to where they're playing, I suppose, but. Definitely, actually, for these running backs. In domes, downgrade them and upgrade them in bad weather or cold weather games for the playoffs here. That would be my general takeaway. Then Minnesota, woo-hoo-hoo. Justin Jefferson had 223 receiving yards in this game, quite a few receptions, no touchdowns, unfortunately. And Kirk had 425 passing yards. So there was a lot of back and forth passing in this game, pretty much as we expected. And Detroit is also not to be messed with in the running game for running backs going up against them. So we'll keep that in mind. They handled Cook pretty darn well. He got a touchdown off of a situation where they ended up getting some goal line work. But other than that, he was pretty much bottled up. Then Philadelphia absolutely ravaged the New York Giants in another one where this doesn't even do it justice. Philadelphia really handled them 48-22 in the end, though. And as far as Philadelphia's offense goes, everybody feasted. Sanders, Hurts, Brown, Smith, they all did good. And for the New York Giants, Saquon Barkley came in with some late reports about being limited today, similar to what I talked about earlier with Amari Cooper. And so I did end up moving him back in my rankings due to that just a little bit. And so here is where I was supposed to say, you know, come hang out with me until kickoff time, because I am keeping an eye on that. Then Daniel Bellinger had a rib injury today. So we'll keep an eye on that because it was looking fairly promising up until his injury. Not super great or anything, but he's an emerging tight end that might have been able to be useful. So we'll see if that's serious. Then Baltimore beat Pittsburgh 16-14 in a nice close game. And as far as Baltimore goes, they really focused on the rushing attack today up against Pittsburgh. They ran it 42 times and passed it 17 times. J.K. Dobbins had 120 yards on 15 carries, and Gus Edwards had 66 yards on 13 carries. And man, Drew's owners are just going to have to keep plugging him in. He did have 6 targets in this game, so you know, that's enough targets, so that's good. And hopefully he'll return to help people who made it to the playoffs with him. Then there was one injury for Baltimore, and that was Tyler Huntley. He got a concussion during the game, and there was some optimism afterwards about him clearing protocol this week because he was able to recite the calendar backwards, which I found out I can actually do better than forwards. So if I ever get a concussion, I'm going to use that tactic to get cleared to play. Then Pittsburgh, as far as George Pickens goes, he just had 3 targets this game, but he did have quite a few yards. I can't remember if he had a touchdown, but maybe. Don't get overly excited by his performance today, and Johnson had 8. So he's still the favorite, and Kenny Pickett had 1 attempt in this game. So he also got a concussion in the game, and there were quite a few of those today for quarterbacks especially. Probably not going to be coming back next week. That is the standard expectation, so we'll see for Tyler Huntley. Then as far as Jacksonville and Tennessee goes, Jacksonville ended up whooping up on Tennessee 36-22 after a bit of a slow start, and a lot of that came from Evan Ingram, who went 11 of 15 for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he caught 11 of 15 balls. And then as far as Tennessee goes, Hunter Henry came through in a poor game script. Actually, let me just brag for a second. You're welcome if I've convinced you to be playing Evan Ingram. You're very welcome. I've been on the Ingram train all season long. So back to Tennessee here. Henry did come through in a poor game script, so that was a good thing, a good sign. And so did some other guys. Chico Okonkwo had a pretty darn good day, if anybody risked that, and for DFS players. And Austin Hooper also had a solid day, not as good as Chig, no touchdown there. And then Nick Westbrook-Ikhine did come through with a touchdown, and it just missed on a couple of long targets that would have really made him have a pop day like I was thinking was possible, but at least he came through all right for the 1% of folks who used him this week. And not a huge injury here, but Dontrell Hilliard did have a neck injury. So I don't want to, he is a person and a football player, and I don't want to ignore the fact that, especially with the neck injury, this could be very serious. So that wasn't what I meant. But as far as fantasy goes, you know, he's not the starter. Then for KC and Denver, Kansas City held on, we'll say, I suppose, to beat Denver 34-28. And for once, Denver's offense came alive, the first and only time probably this season. As far as Kansas City goes, Jerick McKinnon caught 7 of 9 balls for 112 passing yards and receiving yards, and he had 2 touchdowns on those as well. He had some rushing yards as well too. And the main thing I just want to point out is that this is the second week in a row for him, but don't get too excited about McKinnon. I personally would want to see it one more time before I would trust him in the playoffs. But if you're absolutely desperate, I mean, it is something, but I would play him at your own risk next week. Then we move on to Denver, and Jerry Jeudy had 3 touchdowns today, so that was awesome for Jerry Jeudy owners, and Dulcich had 8 targets, so although he did not have a massive day, to the people who have invested in Dulcich, keep him on your team. That's really good. 8 targets is very solid for a tight end. Then Russell Wilson had a concussion, Mike Boone had an ankle injury, and Kendall Hinton had a hamstring injury that took him out of the game. So several injuries for Denver, and they just keep getting injured. Then as far as Carolina and Seattle almost came back, but Carolina started off with a big boom, took an early lead, and held on to the lead throughout the game. And as far as the fantasy players points go for Carolina, well, first of all, DJ Moore, the game script just wasn't there for him. An already, risky situation for him as far as starting him. It really worked against him, and I don't know that he had like any fantasy points, unfortunately, for anybody who started him. And then there's a shame as far as the fantasy points go for Deonta Foreman, because he didn't get any touchdowns. He did okay on the ground, but in a game where you expected quite a bit from him, it just didn't work out. There were 2 rushing touchdowns. 2 other running backs got touchdowns, but not the main back. Then as far as Seattle goes, there really wasn't much to talk about there. Marquise Goodwin was the best receiver on the day. We don't want to really trust that, invest in that going forward. The other receivers are healthy, and they did get 1 touchdown for each of them, and some solid yardage as well for each of them. So it wasn't a bad day for the receivers there in Seattle. And what's his name? Tyler, the running back, did not come through, unfortunately. And then for the last game of the night, San Francisco absolutely dismantled Tampa Bay, beating them 35-7. And as far as San Francisco goes, let's call him Mr. Purdy darn relevant, huh? He had a good game there, Purdy, at quarterback, and this is the schedule going forward for the playoffs. Seattle, Washington, Las Vegas, so that's a pretty quarterback-friendly schedule, and this is an offense that obviously he fits in well with, and I think you can expect some Jimmy Garoppolo-esque production from him. It was a really good day today. I wouldn't necessarily always expect 2 touchdowns, but if you have a good roster, but your quarterback is one that you've been streaming or something like that, and you just need something safe, a way to avoid getting 7 points a terrible quarterback day, Purdy might be that kind of guy for you, especially with these matchups. Yeah, looks good. As far as Tampa Bay goes, I got nothing there. So that's it. Let's keep it quick. Peace out. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in the waiver wire video next. And of course, also check out those rankings videos throughout the week. Bye-bye.